Who's got it better than Jim Harbaugh? Jim Harbaugh just won a national championship at his alma mater, the University of Michigan.
We are all known simply by national champions.
And now he's the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers and one of the highest paid coaches in the NFL.
This is awesome.
Few coaches have had the kind of success that Jim Harbaugh has had, and few coaches are as unique as Jim Harbaugh is.
Darth Vader, you said, is your guy?
It's my boy.
Jim Harbaugh and the Niners were running off the field. Schwartz says something to him briefly, and then this ensues.
If worms had machine guns, then birds wouldn't be scared of them.
Let's rewind to see what makes Jim, Jim. Despite being about as much of a Michigan man as you could possibly be, Harbaugh was actually born in Ohio. His dad, Jack, was a local high school coach for Perrysburg High School. The Harbaughs bounced around the Midwest because of Jack moving up the coaching ranks.
Coaching with a guy like Bo Schembechler, what did he teach you?
You couldn't wait to get to work at 7:30 in the morning. You're going to hear a funny story. You're going to hear some cliche or some those who stay will be champions or the team. Every single day, it was that kind of an adventure.
He was a DB coach at Michigan for 6 years in the 70s, so both of his sons, John and Jim, went to nearby Pioneer High School in Ann Arbor. John graduated from there, but when Jack took the Stanford defensive coordinator job, Jim followed him out west and finished high school in Palo Alto, California. Having spent so many years in Ann Arbor and his dad coaching under Bo Schembechler, Jim Harbaugh decided to go play college football at the University of Michigan.
I'm not going to let drugs get in my way. I'm having too much fun for that. I know I'm a winner because I said no to drugs.
The first game that Harbaugh started at Michigan was a win over the defending champion Miami Hurricanes led by coach Jimmy Johnson and quarterback Bernie Kosar. Not a bad start to a career. Harbaugh started 3 years at Michigan. He didn't put up crazy stats, but who did at quarterback in a run-first Big Ten? 3 yards in a cloud of dust was all the rage. In his last year at Michigan, Harbaugh started all 13 games. Michigan went 11-2 with wins over Notre Dame and Ohio State, a game in which Harbaugh guaranteed victory.
I guarantee it. We'll beat Ohio State and we'll be in Pasadena on January 1st.
Here are some of Harbaugh's accomplishments at Michigan. He won the Chicago Tribune Silver Football Trophy as the most valuable player in the Big Ten Conference. He finished third in the Heisman Trophy voting. He was selected by the AP and the UPI as first-team quarterback on the 1986 All-Big Ten team. He was selected by the AP and UPI as second-team quarterback behind Vinny Testaverde on the 1986 College Football All-America team. He was named to the Big Ten's All-Academic team, and he was named Big Ten Player of the Year. Jim Harbaugh was drafted number 26 overall in the 1987 draft by the Chicago Bears and Mike Ditka.
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Hey, the game start.
All right. We'll get back to that during a commercial. Enjoy the game.
His first 3 seasons in Chicago, Harbaugh was primarily a backup behind Jim McMahon and Mike Tomczak. His first year as a starter was 1990, and the Bears won the division at 11-5. Unfortunately for Jim and the team, Harbaugh was injured, missed the end of the regular season, and missed the playoffs. Jim Harbaugh led the Bears into the playoffs again the next season. They were bounced by the Dallas Cowboys. The next couple years, the Bears regressed. Harbaugh was still playing decent football, but his time in Chicago was over after the 1993 season.
Sometimes we get too smart for our own selves, and when the player knows more than the coach, you have a problem.
I called an audible and didn't work very well.
It's pretty steamed.
Yeah, he was upset about it.
If the situation arises again, there will be changes made, and they'll be definite and they'll be permanent.
It's Mike's team. He can do whatever he wants.
On to Indianapolis. His first year in Indy, he was the starting quarterback at the beginning of the season, but he actually lost his job for a while. But then he got it back again by the end of the year. In 1995, he had probably his best year ever in the NFL. A career high in completion percentage, 17 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions, also added a couple of touchdowns on the ground. He led the Colts all the way to the AFC Championship game. Then the Colts made the playoffs again the next year. They were bounced by Pittsburgh. Harbaugh's last year in Indianapolis was 1997, and they went 3-13. Jim Harbaugh was sacked 41 times, and he also punched Jim Kelly in the face. No, I didn't misspeak. He missed 4 games because he punched Jim Kelly in the face for calling him a baby.
Nuts? I wouldn't describe as that.
Harbaugh got traded to Baltimore, where he had an okay season. Then he finished up his playing career with the Chargers. More on them later, obviously.
That was real! That was real right there! That was real football!
I mean, technically he signed with the Lions and the Panthers, but he never played it down for either team. It was time for Jim to move on to coaching. Jim Harbaugh's coaching career kind of started while he was still playing. He was an unpaid assistant at Western Kentucky, where his dad coached. After his playing days were over, Jim became the quarterback coach for the Oakland Raiders in 2002 when they went to the Super Bowl, and he remained there in 2003. Now enter Jim Harbaugh, head coach. His first head coaching gig was at the University of San Diego. He led the Toreros, I had no idea that was their name until today, to a 7-4 season in year one, followed by back-to-back 11-1 seasons and 2 Pioneer Football League championships. Also didn't know what that was until just now.
You want to play quarterback and you ask me how to throw? Good God, man. I thought you were ready to play here.
As it goes in the coaching world, if you win games, you become a hot commodity. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh wasn't going to stay in San Diego for long. He took the head coaching job at Stanford, taking over an abysmal 1-11 team, and he made an immediate splash. The Cardinal jumped from 1-11 to 4-8, including one of the biggest upsets in recent college football history, a 24-23 win over the then number 1 USC Trojans. USC was favored by 41 points in that game. 41. This definitely put Harbaugh on the map as a big-time head coach. Stanford was 5-7 in 2008, and then 8-5 in 2009 with another win over USC. Stanford had Toby Gerhart in 2009, who had 28 touchdowns on the ground. They also had this guy named Andrew Luck. I don't know if you've heard of him. Luck was also the quarterback on the 2010 team that went 11-1, and then had a 40-12 Orange Bowl win over Virginia Tech. The NFL was dying to get their hands on Jim Harbaugh at this point, and that came to pass. He took the San Francisco 49ers job in 2011 and went 13-3 in year one. Alex Smith, who was holding on to his starting job by a thread, had his first 3,000-yard season and his highest passer rating thus far that year. But the Niners fell short, and they lost to the Giants in the NFC Championship game. In year two, Harbaugh took the 49ers to the Super Bowl. It wasn't without controversy, though. Alex Smith, who had been playing very well, was injured and replaced by Colin Kaepernick, and then when Alex Smith got better, Harbaugh just continued to roll with Kaepernick because he gave the team an extra weapon with his legs. San Francisco went 11-4-1, they beat the Falcons, and then history was made. Jim Harbaugh versus John Harbaugh in the Super Bowl. The first time ever that brothers have coached against each other in the Super Bowl.
Hey, come here. How are you? Be good today. Okay. Proud of you. Really proud of you.
In that Super Bowl, the Ravens took the lead early. Then there was a blackout that delayed things for a while, and the Niners came back. But they ultimately fell short on a controversial no-call pass interference. 2014 was Harbaugh's final year in San Francisco. The team went 8-8, and there were rumors about owner Jed York and Jim Harbaugh's relationship being on the outs anyways. The Niners informed Harbaugh that he wouldn't be returning the next season. Now, I have to say, as a Michigan fan, at this point, I was like, please God, come to Michigan. The stars are aligning. Brady Hoke is out. Jim Harbaugh is out. Let's make this thing happen.
We've got to do a better job playing football, coaching football.
But did Michigan even want Harbaugh? Did Harbaugh even want to go coach at Michigan? In 2007, Jim Harbaugh made some comments about the University of Michigan lowering their admission standards. Former, and at the time current players and coaches had plenty to say about it. Michigan running back Mike Hart said he wished that Harbaugh never went there. Lloyd Carr called Harbaugh's comments elitist, arrogant, and self-serving. There was good reason to believe that Harbaugh may never coach at Michigan, despite many fans, myself included, really wanting that to happen. By the end of 2014, much of the bad blood between Harbaugh and Michigan was gone, though.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
And he was introduced as Michigan's new head coach on December 30th.
I know Michigan football and believe in Michigan football.
Before Jim Harbaugh got there, Michigan was in a pretty bad spot. Lloyd Carr's final season was a wild one, and then Michigan went through the no defense years of Rich Rodriguez and the no headset years of Brady Hoke. The program had taken a step back. Jim Harbaugh is exactly what Michigan needed. Year one of the Harbaugh era was a success overall, despite an opening loss to Utah and the Sean McDonough voice crack play that still haunts me.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. He scores on the last play of the game. Unbelievable.
And a loss to the Ohio State Buckeyes. Michigan ended the season with a 41-7 win in the Citrus Bowl over Florida. I was there. It was glorious. Hopes were high for Harbaugh and Michigan in year two. That team had a lot of talent, but it was unfortunately not upper echelon at the quarterback position. Wilton Speight was solid, but not great. Michigan rose all the way to number 2 in the college football playoff rankings, but fell short against Iowa, and then lost in heartbreaking fashion to Ohio State.
After review, the play stands as called on the field.
If that call had gone the other way, Michigan would have made the playoff, and the upcoming criticisms of Harbaugh likely would have not happened. Instead, Michigan lost that game, and then they lost the Orange Bowl against Florida State, Losing 3 out of the last 4 games was not ideal, but there was still plenty of optimism that Harbaugh was leading Michigan back to the top of the college football world. Through 2017, 2018, and 2019, Michigan continued to fall just short of expectations. By this time, Harbaugh had lost his 5th straight against the Buckeyes, and a decent chunk of the fan base wanted him gone. They didn't think that he was the guy for the job anymore.
When it comes to competing for national championships and winning big games, Jim Harbaugh is an absolute joke.
Many in the national media were saying the same thing.
Jim Harbaugh is a very, very good coach. He's a very good coach, but he is not an elite college football coach. For that reason, I think they should move on from him.
And then, of course, the 2020 season did not help his case. The Wolverines were awful, just 2-4 in the COVID year, and it seemed more likely than not that Michigan and Jim Harbaugh might actually part ways. But Michigan restructured his contract for 2021 to a more incentive-based deal with a lower buyout. The hopes of the fan base were at the lowest point they've been probably since the Brady Hoke era, though. And then the 2021 Michigan Wolverines started hot, but this is something that they had done a few times already under Harbaugh. Start hot against poor competition, and then lose to their rivals. So once again, started hot, and then they lost a heartbreaker to Michigan State, and it felt like maybe, that this was another season of Michigan just falling short. But the belief of the 2021 team was just different. Even after that loss, they were still confident, and that was largely due to Jim Harbaugh and the coaching staff that he had rebuilt, and the recruits that were brought in, guys that were fully bought into Michigan. In previous years, Michigan's defense would destroy inferior opponents, but then they get dismantled by Ohio State. That did not happen in 2021. Harbaugh had assembled a team and a staff that was confident, tough, and built to beat Ohio State. The style of football that critics had called archaic in recent years and would never work. The run it down your fucking throat offense. Yeah, it still works. Ohio State had no answer. Michigan and Jim Harbaugh had gotten that monkey off their back, but could Jim lead the Wolverines to that title that so many fans had expected when he arrived in Ann Arbor 7 years earlier? Well, not that season. Georgia blew the doors off of that Michigan team, and it was clear that Michigan was just not quite there yet. Although, to be fair, how many teams would have beaten that Georgia team that year? The fan base had been acutely placated by the win over Ohio State, but of course, they wanted more. We wanted more. But 2022 meant going on the road to Columbus, plus the loss of Mike Macdonald at defensive coordinator. Harbaugh had gotten the job security that was desperately lacking, so if Michigan didn't make the playoffs or even beat Ohio State in 2022, he still would have been fine. But Michigan did both. Back-to-back wins over Ohio State, back-to-back playoff appearances, but Harbaugh and Michigan fell short again. This time with a loss to TCU in the semifinal, a team Michigan was favored by a good margin to beat, and then many Michigan fans thought, well, maybe this is as far as Jim Harbaugh can take us. Add on top of that the NFL interest in him, and it felt like maybe Jim Harbaugh had reached the end of his time in Ann Arbor. In fact, it seemed like a done deal that he was going to become the next coach of the Vikings when suddenly it was reported that Harbaugh and Michigan had agreed to a new deal.
Help to Michigan, the leaders and bounds.
Then Harbaugh led the 2023 Michigan Wolverines to defeat every team in their path. A perfect 15-0 record that included a 3rd straight win over Ohio State and the playoff success that was not there in the previous 2 years. Harbaugh led Michigan to a victory over Nick Saban's Alabama Crimson Tide.
Low snap, Melrose stopped! Michigan makes a stand and comes up with a milestone playoff victory.
Who got it better than us? Nobody!
And then they dominated unbeaten Washington in the national championship game.
Michigan flexing immediately.
A Michigan Wolverine is great. To be a Michigan Wolverine.
Mission accomplished, job finished, tattoo on Jim Harbaugh's arm.
I can see once you get one, you might want to start adding.
And then it just seemed likely that Jim Harbaugh was going to go back to the NFL because he'd been flirting with the NFL the last couple seasons. He had won the championship for Michigan now, so what was stopping him from going back to the NFL? Plus, there were like 416 head coaching openings in the NFL, so this was the time, and that's exactly what happened. Now, of course, I can't make this video without addressing the cheating allegations, so here goes. Jim Harbaugh bought a cheeseburger for a recruit and got penalized for it, and he had somebody on his staff who was obtaining signs illegally. There you go. Jim Harbaugh became the new head coach of the Chargers, which coincidentally was the last NFL team he took snaps for at quarterback.
Are you guys part of the team or what?
Yeah, I am. We all are. Yeah, and I'm coaching for him.
As of this recording, it looks pretty likely that the Chargers are going to make the playoffs in Harbaugh's first season as their coach. So who knows? The sky's the limit. Maybe he'll be one of those coaches that wins a national championship and a Super Bowl. Time will tell.
Dad was taking us to school, and we walk out, and we're like, where's the car, Dad? And he goes, no car today, boys. We're walking. Grab a basketball. Let's get 100 with the right, 100 with the left. Who's got it better than us? And we're like, nobody.